Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Can anyone hear me? Hello. Okay. Um, Welcome on board for the second session of our SAP S4 HANA Finance training. I want to use this opportunity to actually appreciate all those who actually abandoned their busy schedule to actually join us in this session. In this session, which is going to be our second session for the week, we'll discuss on the overview of the first session or the previous session, and we'll move to the next topic in our second session. So this session is actually being organized by ABrilliants. ABrilliants is a global yet local training consulting and outsourcing firm. We are specialized into all domains of SAP, and we are actually based in Hyderabad and in the US. So, but we cover other locations in India as well. So, welcome once more on board, and hope you do enjoy the session. It's going to be an interactive session. Please, we'll welcome questions because we have available answers for your worries. Thank you. Actually, the session is going to be facilitated by myself. I am George D. Bates. I am a senior consultant, FICO, and S4 HANA. I also have PS background and BPC skills as well. So I've got 15 years of domain experience, as you can see from my profile. I have 15 years of total domain experience, of which this 15 years you have accounting and finance domain, which covered 6 years. I also serve as SAP FICO consultant for a 7-year period, of which I did four years as an HANA senior consultant. In terms of experience, I actually have 4 end-to-end project experience, 3 supports, and currently we also have an ongoing project right now, and we are actually looking forward to keep counting in terms of project experience. Without much ado, I am a certified consultant, certified since 5 years now. So I have domain experience when it comes to finance with SAP. Without much ado, I think we're going to move to the most important part of our story, which is going to be our agenda, what we looked at last week. Last week, during our previous session, we actually worked on a couple of issues, some of which were very interactive because we did welcome so many questions. We welcomed so many questions, and it was amazing. So we said in our agenda, in order to have a clear view or a global view of what S4 HANA is all about or what simple finance is all about, we're going to sacrifice 30 hours of training and interactive sessions for us to have a global understanding of what HANA is all about. We began by looking at the introduction. We went further to look at what S4 HANA was all about. We went to the details of simple finance. And we looked at also the new architecture of accounting, how the innovations in the SAP domain has led to innovations in the new architecture of accounting. It brought us to the point where we had to look at the new functionalities in SAP. And when we talked about the new functionalities, we did look at the general ledger, the management accounting and its changes, asset accounting changes, and the universal journal. Universal ledgers, which actually never existed in the previous version of SAP ERP, especially ECC6. So we also look at migration to Simple Finance 2.0, which is the most updated version of our application, within which we look at the prerequisites for migration. We look at the migration methodologies. We look at the classical journals, and we look at the new GL accounts as well. Furthermore, we are going to look at the configurations and the functionalities of general ledger accounting, management accounting, assets accounting, reporting options in Simple Finance. That is going to bring us to the most important part of our story, which is the innovative aspect of SAP itself, which talks about theory. We're going to look at Lumira. Then we're going to look at an overview of SAP integration, integrated business planning suites, wherein it's going to take us to cash management and central finance as well. I hope you do enjoy this session. I'm going to carry out a review of what we looked at to do in last session. So, introduction to Simple Finance. When we're looking at introduction to Simple Finance, one question arose at a particular point, and that question was, why HANA? Now, we actually went further to actually elaborate on what HANA was all about. SAP S/4HANA. We did look at SAP as a global yet local company. Best businesses do run SAP. But what is HANA? Yes, HANA is a new technology. Yes, HANA is an SAP business suite. But what is it all about? It brought us to the point where we looked at SAP as providing a new product and a new generation of business application. Simple enterprise software for big data and designed to help you run simple in the digital age. Yes, HANA actually came to resolve the complexity which our previous version or our traditional version of SAP did have in the past. So we went further to look at the background explanation of HANA and its revolutions with regards to changes it brings to the business processes and reporting of financial statements. We also looked at the logical evolution, each being necessary to provide significantly new business capabilities and escape for the constraints of the past. Yes, what was it? What were the constraints for the past? That is the question we always ask ourselves. Can anybody in this session actually highlight what the constraints are? Without much ado, when we're looking at the constraints of the past, we said SAP was looking forward to accelerating business innovations through radical simplicity. We needed to gain in time. We needed to have much more possibility of having a step ahead in our market solutions. We needed to be at the edge of any innovation that happened in the market. But before that, you have to look at where SAP was 10 years back. 10 years back, unlike any young company, it had its own challenges and its limitations. But the limitations actually kept the consultants, kept the researchers, kept the developers actually kept working. They kept working on a daily and constant basis to actually improve not only the system, but improve the way businesses and business processes have been run with the SAP solution itself. So it brought us to the point where we looked at embedded complexity. When we did talk about embedded complexity, what is it all about? Embedded complexity we did look at as exercising a complex end-to-end workflow in an embedded and high-numbered complexity of systems. Because each system in SAP is a dependent system, we always look at the database, we always look at the file transfers, we always look at the remote procedures during our SAP day-to-day transaction. And with these particular processes, there was an embedded complexity on how these issues are being handled. So with SAP Simple Finance, we actually solve the problem of this embedment of complexity, because simple finance, like the word says, it's a simpler, yes, a simpler and much more better option to run our SAP and run our business processes. Point number two, we went to large complex suite of applications. You see, in the world 10 years back, developers actually spend so much time, so much resources, so much energy actually developing codes day to day to adjust the challenges and the difficulties which our SAP system actually encountered in the past. And it wasn't easy for these codifications to be adjusted because the system at that time was not flexible. Not being flexible, it was so time consuming to actually develop codes to actually adjust our business processes. Hence, developers had to spend time retaking codifications from a point A, which is a source point, to a point Z, which is a destination point, making their jobs so complex and making it so time consuming. And the resources to put into use at that time in terms of logistics, in terms of material infrastructure, was really enormous. Three, we looked at the time frame of the release cycle. Unlike every project, there is always a departure point and an end point of a project. With the previous versions of SAP, it actually took 15 months, 15 calendar months minimum for a project to go from a start point to a release point, which is the go live point. But as technology did evolve, we did face challenges. Unlike every challenge, there was actually a solution for such challenges. Today, with the help of the simplification of simple finance, it's actually much more feasible to actually run a project within its 6 months time frame. Therefore, we are saving in terms of time, in terms of resources. We could save 9 months as compared to the previous versions of SAP. Now, unlike every other company, SAP 2 is surrounded by numerous competitors. We do have them in the market, in the ERP market. We actually have bigger competitors which SAP met in the market, which SAP actually started challenging in the market. But with these competitors, what was our aim? SAP had in mind of being at the forefront of the market. They were looking themselves in 5 years, in 10 years, being at the forefront. So consultants kept working, looking at innovative ways in order to actually assess it and gaining market credibility, actually working on actually making our product much more reliable. And the reliability of our product as at now has given us a stand ahead in terms of market value, a stand ahead in terms of bidding value, because SAP is not only bridging the gap, but SAP is actually at the forefront of the ERP market system. Now, in the past as well, SAP was actually dependent, like most database companies, we were dependent upon data management by other companies. So, being a trademark in the market, SAP actually looked at what were the advantages in actually developing its own management data portfolios so that it could actually have something which other competitors didn't have in the past. That is how SAP actually came with the development of HANA, and HANA is actually gaining grounds in the market, and HANA is actually one of the best in terms of ERP systems you can talk about in our new generation age. Now, they were also SAP was also incurring large costs in terms of development and infrastructure for resources such as hardwares and sort of software, because these hardwares were actually not changeable or not adaptive to recent changes or recent trends of innovations. But with the cloud system, it's much more easier, it's much more conversant to actually accept changes, and it is much more flexible. This brought us to what HANA and why HANA. and where we were 10 years back and where we are actually today. And if you look at these, it will tell you the most important question in all of what we've just said now is how to stay ahead in the market. So these questions actually answer why and how we stay ahead in the market, because there is massive simplicity in what we do. The simplicity in what we do is the answer, and it has brought us to what is called HANA, the S/4HANA system. Now, in due course of moving towards this simplicity, we have to look at what are our key values, what are our vision, or what is our vision, what is our passion. First, we are passionate about how organizations better run their businesses, how best they become, how profitable they become, and how tax oriented they become. So we help corporations in becoming best run businesses. In terms of our vision, unlike every other structure, we do have a vision. We were looking at a vision 10 years back to become the world's leader of ERPs in the market. And today, that vision is being attained because SAP is widely known and best businesses actually in the world do run SAP. What is our passion? We are passionate about how businesses are being run, the nature of the teams we build around us. We look at the credibility which our consultants have attained in the market and the respect and integrity which they have, because they have values of professionalism and that of responsibility as well. That is where we were 10 years back, and this is where we are with our HANA system. Is there any question as at the development of our trend of HANA as at now? Is there any question relative to that? Now, let's move to a much more logical approach if there are no questions. I can imagine most of you are functional consultants, most of you are end users of SAP solutions, and most of you are actually developers as well. But being finance consultants or being SAP users, we have to know the trend at which SAP actually did develop. And looking at this logic evolution, each being necessary and significant for the performance of our system as compared to the constraints we had in the past, we came up with this kind of chart. On this chart, we have actually our previous version of SAP, which is R2. With R2, it was a very redundant system because there was just one server. On this server platform, it was very challenging. Not only challenging because it was constrained only to a mainstream analysis of data. But basically, as the complexity in the market and the business processes actually started changing, SAP saw the need of actually innovating. And in due course of innovating, we came out with the R3 application. On this R3 application, clients could bring or come in with their own servers. These could enable them to have a better understanding, a better security and scrutiny of their own data at real-time intervals. So at that particular point, we were looking forward to what next? What is the new generation, or what are the innovative ideas we should bring in our digital economy, which was fast advancing. So we came out with the ERP approach in 2004, which uses the web swap application. With this application, there was continuous innovations. Here there were BW DBA servers for reporting purpose, and customers could bring to their own servers and bring their own server for landmark appreciation and landmark analysis. In this point, SAP still saw the need of actually advancing with the fast developing business trend. And they were also looking at how to do or what to do to actually have a share advance in the market situation. So it brought us to a point wherein we had to work hard. And as the developers and consultants kept working hard, they came out with a release in 2015 of the SAP HANA application. The HANA application was a revolution in SAP, and it's still a revolution up to now because people are actually still marveled with the way and the simplicity it brings in the market. Any question up to now? Are we okay with the trend of evolution with the HANA? If so, then I think we should continue if we are satisfied. Now, this is the most important and the most interesting part of the story, the traditional setup of SAP, what we did explain in the previous vision. Now, in this chart, we do have a mainframe server. It was just scrutinized to one particular business location, one particular business architecture. So in this particular aspect, there was a manual operation which was being put into place. But now, as evolution actually did evolve, we realized that yeah, there were evolvement, and we could actually see different kinds of servers, multiple users. A database server was actually being put in place. Now, as evolution actually did evolve again, we realized how complex business processes were, and from business locations and business divisions and mobility in terms of technology, we could realize that there were many servers now put in place, and you could have so many analysis within a given time frame. That was the ERP, our traditional ERP system. And today we have now the much more developed and the much more viable SAP application, which is powered by HANA. I hope this chart actually gives you a clear understanding of the progression which we have had in terms of our HANA system this far. Without much ado, we'll move to our next slide. Our next slide actually gives us the transformation through simplicity which HANA brings in the market. Yes, HANA is actually a revolution, but how simplified is it? Looking at this table, you can have a better clue on what is the simplicity and how it is being transformed. Look at the time frame. We have a cost margin. We have the effort and service, software and data, and hardware components here. We look at the margin at which these operations actually do take effect. And on the other hand, we look at the simplicity in terms of execution processes, which our second HANA application actually takes. It gives you a better time approach for efforts and service admin. It gives you a better approach for software development, because software development and the effort system and the admin system are actually harmonized together. The third phase is the hardware. The hardware is actually scrutinized with the software application at the same time. So here there is a faster and timely processing of data and execution of data. And this timely enhancement actually resulted to because of the innovations which were actually brought in this market. So the system now became very innovative. It used shorter time processes in order to analyze data. It used data analytic skills which were absolutely performant, 100% performant, and anywhere, anytime, every day, at any point, you could have exact reporting tools which you could access the day-to-day reports, unlike the previous versions where you could only wait within periodic moments to have system reports. Now we also move to the next slide. The next slide is going to give you an elaboration on what simplicity HANA has brought in terms of the details. The simplicity helped or brought about advantages in terms of productivity. Now, simplicity brought productivity. Productivity. When we talk about productivity, the first question that comes into our mind was, how productive was the new system, or how productive is the new system? It is productive in two trends: the user approach and the developer's approach. Let's talk about the user approach of simplicity and productivity it brings. Now, the time of execution of data is quicker with HANA. It is better and it is simplified. So it comes with the understanding and simplicity of the user, and it is much more easy or easier to access. When it comes to development, with the HANA application, the developers have less stress because it is a flexible system. Now, on the HANA platform, their codifications could easily integrate the existing system. That is why with this HANA application, we could actually migrate from non-SAP system to SAP system, and we move from existing SAP system to upgraded SAP system without much effort, within a given time frame, within the scope of our work and our integration. There was a radical simplification of IT landscape as well, like we saw in that chart. For example, the other chart, we saw how lengthy it was to move from one phase, from the admin phase to the software phase to the hardware phase. But now, with our HANA system, IT infrastructure became simplified because the three layers were actually joined together. So the cost of landscape, the cost of infrastructure actually did reduce. So there was the cost-effective approach in that sense. Now it brings us to the point of agility. Agility, we had fast response time because with the new SAP system powered by HANA, data is being stored in memory. The time to market, that is time to analytic approach, is faster because our analytics tools such as Theory and Lumira and predictive data analysis. We also have easier changes because of the innovation, because our current system is actually flexible. The flexibility of our current application actually makes it easier for changes to be actually made on the HANA application platform. I'm going to give our session 30 seconds. If there are any questions, please, I will do welcome them and be happy to answer your questions if there are any. Okay, can we continue if there are no questions? In that light, we will look at the upgrade from the previous SAP versions to the most recent SAP version, which is actually being released in the market right now. This version is HANA 1709. 1709 is the most recent version of HANA, and this slide actually gives you an explanation from an end-to-end approach on how to upgrade from our previous SAP system, which is on-premises 1511, and our cloud system 1610, to our most recent system, HANA 1709. HANA 1709 has a simplification of lists for which there are prerequisites on the implementation of HANA 1709. So the software upgrade management as well, which is going to be used at this particular point, is going to be HANA 2.0, which is the latest version as well. And we're going to have a maintenance planner. The maintenance planner is going to actually seek the compatibility between our existing system, looking at the requirements of the new system, and actually blending both systems together. creating path and architectural sets up for these systems and these functionalities to actually be developed and advanced into the new application. Also, there are some tools and some phases which we are going to activate, which is very important because with our implementation or doing our upgrade, we are going to look at two key issues: the activities involved during this upgrade phase, and above all, we are going to look at the plan to perform the upgrade. Because there are sequence of steps from start to end, for which we have to actually pursue in order to carry out these upgrade. If not, if we actually don't follow this sequence during the end of our upgrades, there will be some functionalities will actually be disrupted because we didn't follow our normal sequence or our normal flow of implementation of upgrade. Now, this is a deployment option. In this deployment option, we have our previous SAP versions, which is on-premises version. The on-premises version we just talked about was 15.11, Enterprise Management on-premises edition. You look at here, you look at the qualities and the characteristics it has. Here there are major innovations in terms of finance and in terms of logistics, because most of the procedures and most of the configurations in terms of configurations have been reduced from 5 steps of configuration to 2 or 3 steps maximum. Here there is an inclusion of industries in the core implementation package, which is very important. Those industries which were actually lacking in our previous version of SAP. Now, there are simplification of list items, which means there is a prerequisite of list items to be used in order to handle our on-premises version. Delivering new innovations, leveraging the potentials of in-memory technology and new user interface. The in-memory technology and new user interface, there were customer premises and there was a cloud-based premises approach. Now let's look at the deployment option on a cloud. On the cloud, we have 2 major subheadings. There is a private cloud option and there is a public cloud option. We should learn to emphasize on this. On the private cloud option, the functional scope of SAP HANA Enterprise version on-premises edition 15.11 has some configuration options within standardized versions and standardized procedures. If these procedures are not actually maintained, there will be malfunctioning in this private option. So at this particular point, we will need to actually come out, do a data check, do a system check on our simplification list items in order for us to run this application maximum 100%. Let's move to the next version, which is public option of cloud. For the public version of cloud, we have edition for ERP core scenarios. We have edition for professional and service industry core scenarios. We have edition for marketing and line of business. It gives us 3 different approaches to our cloud edition under public options. Let's come to the first one. The first one actually streamlines procure to pay. The procure to pay, it's a P2P approach. It actually streamlines it. Unlike the previous version of SAP, we had about 7 steps or 8 steps. But with the new HANA application using cloud and HANA SAP cloud, this procedure has been streamlined to 4 processes only. Now there is accelerated plan to product. With this application as well, the acceleration plan to product is actually timely, it's actually effective. There is also a reduction in the flow of order to cash from 8 processes to as much as 4 processes now. There are core human resource approaches. There is a core finance analytic tool, and there is a project service. The project service actually standardizes and regulates the flow and the inflow or the outflow of how data is being used or coordinated within the system. That is the edition. That is the edition for ELP core scenario. Let's look at the next scenario. The next scenario talks about edition of professional service industry. It looks at the project scope for professional service industries. It streamlines procure to pay using service industry approach. It uses core human resource approaches, and it uses core finance approach. So there is a need for a modern project management service in this particular approach. That is, you have to actually streamline the project to suit its industry in which it falls under. Now, let's move to the next one, which is the marketing edition. Under the marketing edition of S/4HANA deployment, we look at the analytic aspect of customer to customer, start mail campaign and analyze return rates. We look at marketing recommendations. We look at marketing planning. We look at marketing executive dashboards as well. So you understand now that with this deployment and with the HANA-based system on cloud and on premises, it gives you a much more analytic approach on how businesses and business procedures are being run using S4 HANA application. I hope this elaboration and this explanation was well understood. If that's the case, then let us move to the next aspect, which talks about the recommendation for HANA 1711, which is our most recent release. 1709 rather. 1709 has its own obligations. It has its own challenges. For example, when we talk about 1711 and we talk about the upgrade, we need to talk about the preparation phase. We have to talk about the realization phase. Now, the preparation phase and the realization phase have different scope of execution. For example, before beginning any process or talking about upgrades, we have to look at our system requirements. Under system requirements, we have SAP has prescribed a particular system landscape on which these HANA 1709 can operate upon. So after looking at the system requirements, we'll look at a maintenance planner. The maintenance planner is going to actually work to actually serve like an audit or like a back check on what the application is going to look like within the future and how it is going to be run. The next phase, we're going to look at the SI checks, and after that, we're going to look at the custom mode of migration. Then we'll move now to the last phase, which is the realization phase, where we'll talk about the software upgrade management or manager and the application specific flow on activities. That is going to give us our flow from our normal or existing SAP scenario to the most simplified HANA scenario. So all of these should work on a sequence, like I did say in the past, because if it doesn't work in a sequence, there might be interruption at one particular point. There might be a breach at one particular point if this is not in a sequence. Are we okay with this at this point? Are we okay? If we are okay, then I think we have to advance. Now, we have seen a diagram, or we have seen a roadmap on how to do our upgrade. To enable you to do an optimal planning of your upgrade to SAP 1709, we provided this SAP 1709 simplification list, which you just saw a while ago. On this list, you have some important notifications, like the simplification list is a collection. What is the simplification list all about? It's going to tell you about the simplification of items. It's going to give you a listing of relevant items for which we could easily convert so that this upgrade moves smoothly. Now, what are these items we need? It's going to provide you a key information by an application or a functional area for which these simplification will work best. Each simplification item details the step that needs to be taken for the conversion from a business and a technical point of view, both preparatory and follow-up steps. Each item is available as SAP notes, and that may contain additional information. Yes, there will be additional information because the versions on which we are going to work using SAP might be different. Some people might be running from 15.11 and others might be running from 16.10 versions. So the requirement at this particular point is going to be different. So we need to actually have a checklist before we can carry out our upgrade. That brings us to now to the most important part of the story. For the upgrade to actually be effective, we have to know on which version of SAP we are running on. That it is going to bring us to the similarities between HANA 0.1 and HANA 0.2. What are the similarities? As a prerequisite for encrypting the data volume, SAP HANA requires the availability of a cryptographic service provider, which is very important. A cryptographic service provider is he who is going to actually help us or stand like a default recommender for common crypto leaves. Because if we have this crypto leaf, it's going to serve like a key for us. I mean, as soon as we have this key, the door is going to be very feasible to open. The encryption of data volume is possible for both. You see, encryption for data volume is possible for both HANA 0.1 and HANA 0.2. That makes it much more interesting. In this case, a persistent root encryption key must be created. Now, this is the most important aspect of the story. If you don't create an encryption key, doing your data backup, as soon as this data is backed up and you don't have an encryption key, you lose all the data which has been saved in your backup. But with your key, it enables you to have access timelessly to your saved data. So it is very important for us consultants, be it finance consultants, be it the developers, be it the end users, to actually ascertain and keep our keys in a safeguarded position, because as soon as these keys are being loose, we don't have full autonomy over our data henceforth. Now, another particular version or instrument, this is very important when it comes to the similarities of these two systems, HANA 1.0 and HANA 2.0. It's the encryption page and the version it uses. At this particular point, you come to understand two things. You need to know when it is periodically renewed. You need to know if it is moving from the movement of data are moved from memory to disk. So you need to know these two flows. And after knowing these two flows, what to do? That is the question you should ask yourself. What to do is now you have to understand that both SAP HANA 1.0 and HANA 2.0 do not support encryption database traces. They both of them do not support that. Subsequently, you're going to see a chart on which we actually provided to you for better understanding. We provided to you for better understanding a table for which you're going to see the similarities and the breakdown of these similarities which we just mentioned above. Now, we talked about similarities. Definitively, there will be differences. How is SAP HANA 1.0 different from HANA 2.0. Look at our table. Now, HANA 2.0, redo lock encryption is possible. The redo lock encryption is possible. But with HANA 1.0, it isn't possible. And once it is activated, lock entries are encrypted using a 256-bit lock root key, which is very, very sensitive. In HANA 1.0, we don't have this approach. Now, secondly, backup encryption is supported natively and can be enabled for all kinds of backup types in HANA 2.0, but which is not feasible with HANA 1.0. That makes it much more cumbersome for HANA 1.0 again. Now, let's move to the next point. There's a possibility need to back up the encryption root key with HANA 2.0, but if we do for lock encryption itself, backup encryption is possible in case of disaster scenarios. But in 1.0, we don't have this approach. Secondly, now we're going to look at a table, looking at this comparison and looking at these differences on how these HANA 1.0 and HANA 2.0 could actually be differentiated and appreciated as well. Point number one, cryptographic service provider. Both of them are enabled. Data volume encryption. Both of them are enabled. Encryption key stored in SSFS. Both of them are enabled. Renewal of encryption. It's okay. We do lock encryption. Now we realize that it is not feasible in HANA 1.0, feasible in HANA 2. Memory encryption, not feasible, and not feasible in both systems. Backup encryption, not feasible, feasible. Data trace encryption, not feasible, and not feasible. Backup root key, not feasible, yet feasible. Password for root backup key, not feasible, and feasible. Import of root key, not feasible, and feasible. So from this table, you can actually have a better approach on what are the similarities and what are the differences when it comes to HANA 1.0 and HANA 2.0. I hope all of you are actually getting to understand the differences, because I'm sure so many of you have actually gotten the privilege to like come to a particular question with this particular question on what are the differences and what are the similarities of HANA 1.0 and HANA 2.0. I think today, at the end of this session, you won't have this problem anymore. So it brings us to the most important aspect of our story. As finance consultants, we are much more interested in the financial activity or the financial aspect of our application, because functional consultants have little time to talk about the HANA platform itself, because all of that is the domain for ABAPers or basic consultants and developers. So we are actually functional consultants. We actually get into what domain actually suits us best, how we actually execute our applications, and how we actually key in data, and how we do analytic approaches to data, and how we actually revert these data and audit the system so that we can actually have our reports timely, accurately, and to enable us for decision taking as well. So Simple Finance on HANA is the latest iteration of HANA in-memory technology, a technology that has already improved analytic and reporting significantly. That is the most important aspect of Simple Finance. It enables us to actually better analyze and better run our businesses. Simple Finance replaces the classical and the traditional financial application in SAP ERP system by introducing Simple Finance, which comes with a simpler data model. That is a simpler data architecture, a simpler data reporting module, and a simpler data replication module as well. Topics involved include overview of SAP HANA, which we have just seen. We have looked at HANA deployment, and subsequently we are going to look at the architecture behind this HANA, and it's going to give us that trend of flow, wherein we are going to talk about the central finance under HANA. We are going to look at the general ledger. We are going to look at the cost element. We are going to look at integrated business planning. We are going to look at cash management. We are going to look at standards and appendix ledger as well. We are going to look at new assets accounting ledger, because under simple finance there is a total approach. We have 4 different approaches. We have to look at the new functionalities which it brings. It brings new functionalities under general ledger. It brings new functionalities under new assets accounting ledgers. It brings new functionalities under universal ledgers as well. So we have to be very keen when we are handling these particular aspects, and we're going to see the differences as the training unfolds. Let's move to the next slide. The next slide is going to talk about this session, or this interactive training session is for. This training session could be for everyone, but our main audience are the end users who don't have a mastery of the system or the innovative system. So we as consultants, we have the right to actually handhold them so that they can have a better understanding, so that it becomes much more easier for them to handle their day-to-day task in the office. It's also a training relevant for consultants or users targeting to become consultants. I know it is very challenging to pass from one role to this next role. As consultants, it's easier to understand some of the basic functionalities, but as end users, you might not have a master or a masterpiece of all the terminologies and all the infrastructure and the configuration setups. This information is also relevant for financial accountants, because they have the trend and the tendency to actually analyze the system. That is why it is very important to have an accounting background, because if you have an accounting background, you're going to blend the technical and the accounting background or the finance background. So you're going to have a better understanding than somebody who came in from a different discipline. Without no much ado, even the ABAPA guys too, I think the ABAPA guys and the basic guys too, they can have a better mastery, because they are the ones actually doing the codifications here. Is that okay? Now, we also have this information for those who are SAP Power users, or functional support consultants, system or business analysts. We need this for finance managers, because they are the ones to actually take decisions. So they too need this. And the most important one is we need this for all those who are just beginning or who want to join this beautiful domain experience, which is called SAP technology or SAP consultancy. It's a very enterprising, it's a very challenging yet very interesting profession. And I think all those who are actually in the SAP sector, they can testify to you how challenging their experiences are, and how they are looking forward to even make it even much more better. So that is our audience. We have looked at our audience. I think on the next slide we should move to serious issues. Simple finance, the roadmap to simple finance. I'll give you 30 seconds to go through this table or this roadmap and look at what you can actually derive from it, how you can better appreciate this table. From the roadmap, you can appreciate the table either from a financial approach, or you can appreciate it from the technical aspect of it. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to go through it before we start explaining the technical details behind it. But that notwithstanding, if there are any questions, just at now, we do welcome your questions. We are actually here to clarify your doubts, so that you become not only the wonderful consultant you intend to be, but you also enable to increase the team of existing consultants as well. Okay, can we continue? Are we okay? Are we on the same page? If we are on the same page, then I think we can continue. Now, simple finance, the roadmap of simple finance. Simple finance could be actually streamlined into four processes. This is process one, which is the technical approach, process two, which is the migration method, portion, approach three, functional approach, and the fourth one is the innovations which it brings to the market. Now, when we talk about the technical approach, the first thing we look at the technical approach in simple finance is going to be in-memory database. When we are going to discuss about in-memory database, first we look at the components in-memory data aggregations and data migration. Looking at data aggregations and data migration, we look at not only the technical analytic aspect of data, but we look at also how it moves from a source point to a destination point, and how within this time frame or within this lap of source point to destination point, how this data is being analyzed and how the data flow actually progresses. The next one we talk about is the data redundancy. Due to our innovation to simple finance, first, the procedures of setup and configurations have actually been simplified. It's moved from 8 setup processes to 3 or 4 processes. So enabling it to be much more simpler in terms of customization, in terms of setup. So there is a scope of less data redundancy at this particular point. The next one we talk about are database tables. Unlike the previous or the traditional version of SAP ERP, or ECC 6 or ECC 7 editions, we looked at how data are being analyzed in tabular forms, and most often in row forms. But with the existence of simple finance, it's transformed or it has eliminated these data tables into columns, it makes it much more easier and timely for analytic aspect in terms of data traceability and data analysis and data outsourcing. So hence, with data tables, it becomes much more easier to analyze data from the technical approach. Migration. Migration, it's a very important aspect when we talk about simple finance, because most often we are going to look at 2 different systems. We are going to look at existing SAP systems. We are going to look at non-existing SAP systems. Now, it is possible with the simple finance to migrate from an existing SAP system to an upgraded SAP system. That will talk about migration. And it's still possible for us to move from a non-SAP system to an SAP system. But for that to happen, for this to happen, we have to talk about the HANA basics. On the HANA basics, we'll talk about deploying simple finance through different methods. First, we'll need to understand what basis is all about. We'll need to know what is the system architecture behind these bases. Because with basis, it has a structurized field and mapping approach, which we need to actually match with one point and another point for this system to work smoothly. Second point, we're going to look at the system landscape transmission. After doing our mapping and structurizing our setup and our customization, we have to look at the system landscape transmission, wherein the data flow is going to move from, how the data is going to flow. Because if our flow is in a sequential form, it's going to be much more easier for our analytic approach. But if it is in a non-sequential flow, it's going to actually disrupt our system, because timelessly we're going to actually be held back due to one customization or the other. Now, after the system landscape transmission, the next thing is we're going to look at the data migration options. What are the different options we have, and how to do or what to do with these different options. The third point, which is the functional approach, which concerns us, as finance consultants. It gives us the possibility of universal journal, approach, which, unlike the previous version, we do have a journal for FI, we do have that for CO, we do have that for other submodules. But with this one, we have a universal journal, which actually receives and is going to elaborate on all the changes we have with FI and CO changes. Is going to elaborate on the FSCM changes as well. Now, the last point we're going to talk about is the new innovations when it comes to Fiori and how the Fiori and the Lumina platform actually works and the predictive analytic aspect of it all. Now, I hope there are no questions. I hope this particular situation actually better explain what HANA is all about. If that's the case, then I think we're going to advance. Let's move to the next slide. The next slide here, we are going to talk about system architecture. Under system architecture, like I did explain in the slide above, you're going to look at the flow of processes, the sequence from the traditional to the much more simplified version. Here you will see financial accounting documents, controlling documents, profitability documents. But here, this has been transformed to universal journal entries. So there is just one system in our S4 HANA application, which makes it much more easier and much more simplified. The next slide is going to give you a more detailed elaboration of the architecture behind Simple Finance. A much more detailed application behind Simple Finance. Here it's going to tell you about the classical finance and the simple finance version, which is still what we just looked at in our table a while ago. Here you're going to see you have a general or a centralized ledger. Here you have material ledger, you have asset accounting, you have a business warehouse, you have your COPA approach, you have your CEO approach. From the general ledger towards the right, you have profit and loss analytic table, and from your general ledger towards your left, you have a balance sheet. So it gives you a better approach on what to do, how to do it, and how to progress with this. Look at Simple Finance. Simple Finance gives you a cloud of universal journal, all of them attached to one another. It gives you better comprehension, a better approach, and a simplified data process in terms of data analysis. Are we okay? Let's move to the next slide. Now, looking at this next slide, you see the architecture of the universal journal is a little bit different, much more simpler, and much more analytic, and much more explicit. Look at the analytic aspect of it. You have your general ledger. Under your general ledger, you have company, you have your accounts. Now you have your profit centers. All of it is unified. On the next slide, you have profitability, you have your market segments, you have your operation concerns, and all of this inflow of information moves into one unified journal. This unified journal actually embraces all of the inputs of data and analyzes them into different forms, into management accounting, assets accounting, and material ledger. So all this information are being keyed into one unified journal, which then correlates this information, and above all, analyzes them at timely speed and at due diligence. Let's move to the next slide. It's going to give you a better understanding of the key points in the architecture or the architectural universal journal. First, it's going to give you some insights into what the universal journal is all about. There is a single source of truth. There is redundant table which has been removed. It is not disruptive, which means you have to move from, unlike before, you had to move from the finance table to the control table to the profit table to the material ledger table, but now you have just one journal wherein you put all your, or you key in all your information, and the information is going to be actually run. Now, from this approach, you have the multiple viewpoint from one source, which means at real time, everybody can access not only the financial reports, but everybody can actually do system audit at real time, anywhere and at any place. The new journal entry consists of a header, which you can use BKPF to describe, and it is represented by this T code, ACDOCA. That is the T code it has been represented with for the new journal entry. Here you can carry out, you can carry forward, you can do corrections in migrations as well, which was actually not feasible with the old system. And here you have a multi-gap capability through through LDN dimension, and here you have 23 digits for currency field. So we can use multi-currency when it comes to simple finance. In a nutshell, that is what we looked at during our previous session. That's what we looked at during our previous session. Here is still data entry in the Universal Journal, how it is being streamlined, how they are being aggregated, and how the processes are actually being done. Here you understand two things. You look at the FI documents, the CO documents. You have the total index and financial accounting approach. You have the total indexes and the financial management approach. You have the analysis here, and you have the processes. But with Simple Finance, it is flexible. We have just one universal journal, single repository across the application, data aggregation on the fly, and we have our results at this particular point. So it is much more simplified. It is super simplified. It saves us time, it gives us quicker data analytic approaches, and it gives us a better hand-on experience as compared to the previous version. I hope up to this point there is no concern. Now, NetWeaver Business Client. This is also a layout which actually enables us to actually use our system. NetWeaver is a web-based client with different screen layouts. So some configuration and transaction steps are moved to NetWeaver Business Client. So that's it. So that was as at last week presentation. Now, today we are much more interested. Today we'll be much more interested in looking at one of our principal concerns, which is the functionalities, the new general ledger in SAP HANA. The new general ledger in SAP HANA. New general ledger. We all know that our existing ERP system has two kinds of ledgers. We have the classical GLs, and we also have the new general ledgers. But now, in HANA, we need to actually do some upgrades. If these upgrades are not done, there will be malfunctioning in our system. So we are using classical GL and classical GL assets accounting in ECC. And we want to migrate from existing ECC system to HANA system. Generally, what to do? That is the question. Generally, what to do? That's the question. But now, we can actually ascertain this change. We can actually ascertain this change by responding to this question. The question, we are to migrate from the new GL with S4 HANA Finance. That's why we have to run separate projects, which means we have to upgrade in this sequential flow, which I did mention in the past, so that at a particular point in time, The new assets accounting is a must to use, for the HANA system, because the HANA system only accepts modification when it comes to new general ledger, because the new general ledger has different functionalities which the previous one doesn't have. Now, also the new general ledger has a better option of performance. Yes, you can ask your question, please. Somebody said he had a question. Can you ask your question, please? Hello. Carry on with your question. We are all ears. About modeling studio, yes, there is a modeling studio difference. There is a slight difference which I did explain in the previous slides. At that particular point, you will need a simplification list check. With this simplification list check, you could actually use the new functionalities in order to do the data modeling from existing SAP 1610 version to 1709 version. There will be system check which will be different. There will be system prerequisites which will be different, and there will be innovations in the technical aspect of the implementation part of the modeling. So that's the difference you have. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. So we can proceed. So we need to migrate from the normal classical ledger to a new GL, which is going to be much more flexible, much more tolerant to changes, and much more tolerant to modeling. Now, in due course of carrying out our migration, the first thing you should always have at the back of your mind, there are two approaches towards these. The first approach is migrating from a classical GL account, or from a classical GL to the new GL. This migration should be done as a separate project, like I did say in the past, because if we handle them as a separate project, it's going to go on a sequential flow. But if we have to gather them as one particular project, we'll miss out some of the functionalities. So it's going to disrupt our SAP system. And at any particular point in time, we'll need to actually come back to the platform and redo the codifications to actually adjust our entry or adjust our reporting mapping scheme. But if it is done or handled on a separate project-based approach, it's going to give us an upper hand to actually do system audit, wherein all applications are being checked at real-time interval, and actually are certain that the flow of information or the data landscape flow is optimum at all levels. So this is going to lead us to two aspects: the first approach and the second approach. In the first approach, we have data and document splitting. On a document splitting approach, we're going to look at what document splitting is about, what are the innovations document splitting brings into our existing SAP system. We are going to look at the balance sheet at the profit center level. It is much more complex at this particular point, because we are going to look at two different aspects of profit center levels. We are going to look at the business areas. We are going to look at this, the business areas and the profit centers themselves as two different entities in this approach. Now we are going to look at the parallel accounting approach as well. We are going to look at the segment reporting standards. We are going to look at the ledger approach for parallel accounting, and we're going to see how we could customize these fields accordingly. In customizing these fields accordingly, we'll take the first approach, which is document splitting. Document splitting. Document splitting is the new feature in SAP, which enables automatic posting in profit centers. That at any point in time, you can get the balance and the financial position at different profit centers, which was not happening in the previous version of SAP. It is also used, document splitting also use a concept, a zero balancing account concept, which enables making single entries to double entries and balances the account accordingly. There are three forms of document splitting. Here we see the active document splitting, you have the passive document splitting, and you have the zero balance account approach. So, without much ado, I hope this document splitting approach is just okay for you to understand. Now, let's look at, before we round up, we just take 5 minutes to look at some small elaborations before we round up. We have the balance sheet at the profit center level, which is also an analytic approach towards our SAP trend. The next one, we have a parallel accounting, which we'll do during our setup. We have advantages of parallel accounting. It moves us to the next point, which is segment reporting in SAP. And we'll go to the second approach. So at this particular point, we'll end there for today for our second session. But we'll do remind all of you, we hope you had a wonderful time with us. And we don't know if you have actually shared your email address so that we could intimate you at real-time interval. We are looking forward to working with you. We pray and we hope all those who are really intending to actually get this HANA approach to HANA to actually register for this course at the earliest so that we get started. We are looking forward to working with you, and it has been a very interactive session, and we are looking forward to having you during our next session. You can find our contact details on the screen. Please, we are expecting you again. Kindly register at the earliest so that we can actually start the course. Thank you. It was my pleasure having you all. Like I did say, my name is George Bates, and ABrilliants IT Solution is actually working hand in hand so that we can carry this course to you at its simplest form. We thank Mr. Kumar for actually putting everything possible for us to actually organize this course, and we look forward to him to do better interactive sessions than this one. Thank you.